All right, staying with the forest conservation and environmental issues, we are now joined live on Zoom by Dr. Oulie Keita, who is the Executive Director of Greenpeace Africa. And she joins us live for us to have a conversation around issues of climate change. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's just delve right in from the onset. For somebody who just tuned in and had Greenpeace and is wondering what is Greenpeace. So why Greenpeace? What is Greenpeace?
Greenpeace is a global organization for the protection of the environment, and Greenpeace Africa, based here on the continent, is all about making sure that Africans are living in peace and harmony with nature. So that is what Greenpeace Africa is all about.
Okay, so issues of climate change are not just limited to one country, they are a global issue. The question would be, how can governments work together across the continent to kind of forestall the effects of climate change?
Yes, the effects of climate change, as you can see, are really pertinent as we speak because of what you're seeing in Kenya, for example, the droughts and the famine in Mozambique, Malawi. We have the hurricanes and typhoons, and all over Africa, we're suffering the impact of climate change. And governments are doing a lot, of course, to remedy some of these catastrophes that we are dealing with, but there is room for improvement. There is a lot more that we can do. If you look at, for example, the regulatory framework, there are things that we can do to improve the way we protect our environment. And the governments are working in that space because, as you've seen during the COP27 in Egypt, they came together as one to really promote some of these frameworks, these policies that need to be implemented and also hold the big polluters accountable so that when we talk about adaptation, for example, or mitigation, or even loss and damage, that Africans are taken into account, that Africans are paid, or and when I say paid, I don't mean just economically, but that we actually put measures in place that we, the people who are suffering from the impact of the climate change, are actually compensated for their loss and damage. So there's a lot to be done, and I think the wheel is in motion for us to rally behind our governments as civil society organizations so that we can do a lot more that needs to be done to remedy some of these challenges that we are facing as a continent.
Okay, I hear you say measures and some of the campaigns. What are these campaigns, for example, that Greenpeace Africa has been involved in this far?
Yes, so if we take, for example, Kenya, I'm in Nairobi this week meeting with my team. In Kenya, Greenpeace has been doing a lot in terms of the food. We have a campaign called Food for Life, which is really important for the people in Kenya. As we know, because of famine, so many millions of people, if I'm not mistaken, 6 million people are suffering currently from famine in Kenya. And so for us, food insecurity is a big challenge that we should tackle. So the Food for Life campaign is something that we would like to really put our efforts in to make sure that Kenyans are not going hungry. We need to make sure that we work and put pressure on our governments, but also on all the key stakeholders, so that together we find solutions to the food insecurity issues that we're facing in Kenya. And this is the same in all of our African countries, because food insecurity is a big topic for all African governments. So together we have to find solutions to make sure that we are addressing this very important campaign. So this is just one of the campaigns that we are doing, which is linked to climate change. But we also have things related to really building a movement of young people to come together as one, to speak with one voice on some of these important issues that Africans are facing. So one of the pathways that Greenpeace Africa is doing is strengthening what we call the climate justice movement in Africa, to really give more voices to the climate change crisis on the continent.
All right, Dr. Oulie, on the website, I see your motto is greener, healthier, and a more peaceful planet for generations to come. And I like that you mentioned the youth. So what would be your vision for the youth, for the African youth that are involved in climate or climate activists, young climate activists around Africa?
I think the youth are the most important stakeholders in this climate change movement. In all of our countries, the young people are the majority of our population. So I think we need to find ways to strengthen their capacities to make them very active agents in the climate change crisis. So we at Greenpeace, we have what we call Planet One, or in the Ubuntu space hub, where we have young people from all walks of life interested in the environmental protection or interested particularly in climate change issues. We strengthen their capacities so that they can go in communities and help our communities to mitigate, to adopt, to find ways to be more resilient in the face of this climate change. And so it's a big agenda for Greenpeace Africa. And our goal is to have a very big movement of young people across the continent to come together as agents in the climate justice movement, so that we resonate with our local needs and we find ways together to mitigate some of these things that we are dealing with as a continent. So the young people are central to the work of Greenpeace in Africa. Okay.
You said strengthening capacity, even with the youth. Some of the issues that we've seen, around climate change, just environmental conservation, famine, and drought. Just the other day, we saw that, especially and specifically in Kenya, we had a drought and a famine, and because of that, most of our farmers lost majority of their livestock. But the thing is, most people do not know that even after the rains have come, that there are things that they need to do or things that they need to put in place. So when you say strengthening capacity for the youth, are you also talking about some form of education to teach people, to get them to a place where that is something that is possible as we finish?
Absolutely. We're talking about sensitization because, as you said, many people really don't make the connection between climate change and what's happening to them in terms of, for example, famine or drought or, even losing of their livelihoods. And there is a direct link. So we are trying to sensitize people to really know some of these issues so that they're empowered to act and preserve and be agents of change in their communities. So if you talk about, for example, the triple E's, which is education. So education is all about sensitization. It's not just formal education, but finding ways to talk to everyone about climate change. And then the second E is on empowerment. So if you educate, if you sensitize people, they are empowered to be able to make decisions impacting their lives. And then that also can come with opportunities, for example, employment. So if people are educated, they're empowered, then they are more prepared to be employed, to make a living out of whatever skills or expertise that they have. So this is very, very important to us. And this is one of the things we are trying to incorporate in our operating model, Greenpeace Africa: education, empowerment, and employment. Indeed. So those are social economic paths we're looking into.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Oulie Keita, who's speaking to us via Zoom from the Greenpeace Nairobi office on matters climate change.